access to regular transportation. She lives in a retirement village that is church sponsored, and so it is affordable. And she has MS, and so she knows these limitations of being on a fixed income and understanding. And then the secondary thing is that she has a deep heart for engaging across so many different boundaries. She has such a desire. Just last week, she was talking to me about how she was taking anti-racism training, and I was like, Marty, let's have another conversation.
That's awesome.
So just excited to bring her in and engage with her with this. I'd also want to include Sunny. Sunny is a retired Spanish teacher from a local high school, and has done a ton of work with engaging the immigrant women's community and how to empower immigrant women, Spanish language immigrant women. She's done it internationally and is really desiring to actually think about it more locally. And so I'm really excited to kind of talk to her because of her background and desire to work with the immigrant community, and also to just a love for younger, being that she was a high school student or high school teacher.
She must have a lot of good relationships, it sounds like. Yeah. Anybody else for this first round?
I would say Robin, who is a new member to our church, and she comes from a background where she grew up in Washington, D.C. and grew up in the city of Washington, D.C., grew up in very, very multicultural, and then moved to rural Montana and now is in Portland. And so she has an interesting story of just very different experience living in urban Washington, D.C., living in small town Montana, and then finding herself living in East County, Portland, and kind of feeling that there's actually a weird blending going on in East County, Portland of her Montana experience and her Washington, D.C. experience. And so getting her involved, because she's also expressed the deep desire to just be more engaged with our neighbors and connected with our neighbors. So she's of interest to me. So those are the three. I can drop a fourth if you want, but I can just leave it there, you know.
Yeah, it's good to know there's more, because you probably have a lot more in your community, but it kind of gives us an idea of who you're thinking about and why. Does everybody hear that? I want folks to stop and start to jot down the names of people that you're thinking of now because of what Josh is sharing. I'm hearing in Josh's descriptions, like, people who have passion and energy around this work, people who are connected in the larger community, who have other relationships, people who have skills that would be powerful and needed, like facilitation, like speaking Spanish. I'm hearing a lot of good leadership potential in these folks, and yeah, I could hear why they'd be important to be in the midst. Hey, Janelli, as you think about Warner Pacific students and I know we've talked specifically about Warner Pacific students that live in Gresham, and there's a lot, and alum, who are a few of the people you're starting to think about? Who do you want to be touched by this listening season in some way?
Yeah, so the first person that comes to mind is Liz.
Mm-hmm.
And she is a friend of mine, actually. We became friends at Warner Pacific University. She learned a little bit about organizing, and she got very connected. And as we did a one-on-one, which was learning one-on-ones, and we talked about our stories and we got reconnected, she talked a lot about how she wants to stay in Southeast Portland, but can no longer too. She also talked about the fact that because of her work schedule and her needing to work full-time in order to afford to go to college, but also afford her basic living needs because her family can't support her through college, it makes it more difficult for her to gain classes. So her second option was going into the adult degree program, but she doesn't feel like she's supported in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And she's very passionate about, okay, how do we get students resources to be able to work and help their families, but also get the education that they want around their schedule, but getting the support from the institution as well.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever we get together, we always have deep conversations and hour-long conversations. He's great.
That's awesome. Yeah. So she feels what it's like to live in these tensions, right? I need to work, school, like her interest, her heart is right there in the work.
It is. And she's constantly holding people's hands along the way. She goes, I'm going through this. You are too. Let's do this together so we don't feel like we're alone.
So she's super relational. It sounds
super relational.
That's awesome. Cool. Who else?
Ruben,
Mm-hmm.
he is a biology major, which is great. And he was born and raised in Southeast Portland. He moved here when he was in high school from Cuba, and
Mm-hmm.
he learned Spanish really quickly. He goes, it's really hard for someone that isn't from here to learn Spanish. He goes, we have a huge Hispanic population, Spanish speaking population in East Portland. He goes, but it's really hard for me to get resources for my parents that don't know English very well yet. Because I spent hours after school learning English to help my family. When I came to college, it became really difficult for my parents to understand university, as I was a first-time college student. And getting resources from my university to help me get the support I need to then support my family was very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also very, very relational. He's always trying to get involved. His whole frame of work is education. So he worked with a lot with it. Portland Public Schools education system, volunteering, because he wants students to get the resources that they need in order to succeed, and mostly around Spanish. So Spanish speaking resources.
Beautiful. Cool. Thank you so much. That's a really amazing start. I mean, you have a core team potentially there to kind of lead your listening season, right? Between these folks. Let's zoom out a little bit. Who are some of the community partners, Josh, that I know that Covenant has some community partners already. Who are some of the community partners that you have, and who are some of the people who are part of that partnership that you want to be woven into this conversation?
Yeah, so some of our community partners, one is Snowcap, who we've had a long-standing relationship with. They're the largest food pantry in the state of Oregon, and the Oregon Food Bank's largest customer. And we helped Covenant very proudly says we're one of the 5 congregations that helped start Snowcap 50 years ago. And so they've had this weaving of history with them and deeply connected with them. And now we're going into an even longer term, another step in our relationship. They're going to be land leasing from us our property to build their clothing distribution center on half of our property. So we have this built-in relationship that's with them, and they have a lot of connections with the community through the work that they do. Food and clothing distribution to, marginalized and to those in need. So
who are the people, the humans?
So I'm really interested in connecting. So I'm now sitting on the board. So I'm really interested in talking to the board director, Guy. Yes, his name is Guy.
Okay.
And he and I had a really good conversation over a fundraiser about engaging around issues larger than just food scarcity and things. And so I'm really interested in engaging with him because he's also well connected. He's a retired nonprofit services director. And so I'm just really interested in kind of engaging his knowledge and understanding and his position. And then also too interested in Kirsten Wageman, who's the director of Snowcap, engaging. We've had some really good conversations initially about what does the potential of Covenant Snowcap partnership look like, and what does that entail and things. And so engaging, and she's rooted in East County. She lives here, and she's connected with a larger community. So it's like also as a person who is deeply rooted in the community, engaging with her.
Josh, it sounds like you've had one-to-ones with these people before because you have a lot of knowledge about them. So if you're listening in and you're like, we have community partners, and yes, I've had one-to-ones with them and I know all about them. But if you're listening and you're like, that's a community partner I just thought of that we have that actually don't know the people very well, you might want to, that could be your first step, right? Is to set up those one-to-ones in the next week or so and start to get to know some of these the people that make up your partnerships. Any other, because we have to move pretty quick, Josh, maybe name one other community partner that you think of.
Yeah, so one other, just to be on kind of those lines of one other community partner that I don't have some deep connections with, I did a relationship with them over a year ago now, is Immigrant Connection, which is this beautiful resource out of a local church that does work with helping undocumented immigrants go through the immigration process, like the legal help to go through and become documented immigrants and all of those things, to do that legal process. And Tita, who's the director, I'm really interested in engaging her around that work again, and seeing the work that she's doing in engagement in the community and working specifically with the immigrant community. That really is kind of a thing where we'd be like, yes, that's a bridge we need to be connecting again, you know. Yeah.
A question you can always ask, right, of your partners, like if you have good relation, who else from your organization would be interested in this conversation, interested in deepening relationships and starting to weave a collective story together, both of what is and what could be as we look to act together in our community. Awesome. Janelli, I'm wondering if there are any other partners or community partners or congregations in the area that you think of.
I don't. Josh does, because he's been more in contact with that. I've been doing more one-on-ones with community.
Cool. Josh, do you want to, are there a couple other congregations out there? Let's get that.
Yeah, so I'm really interested in connecting with, just off the top, is Parklane Christian Reformed Church. Peter Armstrong is a pastor there. They've been doing a lot of work around the neighborhood and engaging, and have been doing a lot of conversations between the Black community, white community, and engagement in that. He was integral in helping start a Black Lives Matter march in our neighborhood, which was kind of a big deal since all of them were targeted downtown. This one was actually in, in the neighborhood where the diversity is. And then Scott Mccracken, who is a longtime local organizer, he's a member at As Is Church, which is a new, non-denominational church plant, but he's got a deep heart for the neighborhood in the area, and so engaging him and his congregation would be really interesting to go that avenue. Yeah.
Awesome. Again, you can ask them when you meet with them, who else from your community do you want to be a part of this weaving, right? Who else will you bring with you? Who would be interested? The last question, we only have about one minute left. Thank you both. What are, I know you've had time to think about this ahead of time, but we're thinking about how we weave our stories together and how we uncover both what's pressing in on the community, what the pressures are, what the struggle is, so that we can begin to identify where those pressures come from and act. But also we're learning about our capacity together, right? What the relationships are, what the gifts are. So what are some questions that you want to ask in these house meetings, in this listening season? What are some of the kind of core central questions you feel like you want people's stories to be connecting around, threaded around? What do you want to know? And what do you think everyone else needs to know in order to have deep relationship and begin to act together? Discern action.
I think a good question to be asking is, so with the one-on-ones that we've been having so far, a lot of what I've been hearing is when we have one-on-ones, we're having relational connection. A lot of the stories that they're telling isn't their stories. It's their neighbors' stories, their partner's stories, their friends' stories. So I feel like people are already engaged in what's happening, but it's engaging their story into the community to be like, I'm also part of this community. I'm also doing this. I've been seeing a lot of people worrying about everyone else but themselves, putting everyone else first. So I feel like a question that I want to ask is, how does your story connect with theirs? What are you going through that also connects with your neighbor's story, that makes you care so deeply about their story and why you remember it first?
I think that's really powerful, Janelli. So how is what you are going through connected to your neighbors, family, friends? That's great. We could frame that a little bit, like, what are the pressures on you, your neighbors, and loved ones, right? And how are they connected? There's different ways, you know, we can get at these, but we can keep wordsmithing playing to see what feels powerful and works. Any other question that you might want to ask in this first round of listening together? What, like, as you imagine people coming together, what are the kinds of stories that you want them to tell that are going to help them weave deep relationship and really know each other and know their community? Anything else?
I think, what did you hear
Mm-hmm.
that made you care? That made their story resonate with you.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, when you hear this story, when you hear other people saying, I heard this from my neighbor, and someone else said, I heard the exact same thing from my neighbor. And then saying like, this is my story and this is how I connected to your neighbor and then to my neighbor. I think that weaving of that connection, I think, is what's going to help weave the stories together and feel that connectedness of, I care, you care, this is my story, this is your story. How do we put that together and be like, okay, this is collective power, this is what we need change in, this is what you need, this is what I need.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Janelle. Josh, anything you might add, or are you good? Good place to start.
No, I think that's a good place to start.
Sweet.
I mean, I just come at it with I'm usually kind of a reflective question person. So I try to listen to the story that they weave and ask questions from the stories that they weave, often trying to find a deeper connection, getting them to go deeper. I think I learned that from you, Melissa.
Well, I think that's right. That's what happens in good one-to-ones, right? Like we're going deeper. When we come around house meetings, there's usually some central questions that we're having everyone ponder together. And then and these questions get us deep. So that's what, we're trying to figure out what could those questions be. I'll just add, you could add a question like maybe towards the end of the meeting, maybe there's a question about, given what we're hearing, what is one dream you have for our larger community, right? We can take the tension and the heartbreak we're experiencing, what's hard. We can also, but looking around, we realize how much capacity we actually have. We can begin maybe to speak a dream. So that could be cool to do too. Maybe at the end, kind of as people leave the house meeting, start to weave some dreams. What's the world we want to co-create together, right? What's the world we want to live in? Okay, we're over time, so I'm going to have us send us into team breakouts. There's also some next steps you two need to work on in our teams were around calendaring house meetings and calling together a team that's going to help you execute this listening season of house meetings. So don't forget about that. But now we're going to have everybody break out into their team time, and you'll be accompanied by one of our design team members. And we're going to do a similar exercise that we just did in our breakouts. Okay, I think we're all back. I'm going to pass it to Josh Kingsley to help us do a quick harvest of some ahas from our
great.
gathering.
Thank you very much. And I just want to say a big thank you to St. Philip's for letting me be part of your meeting. That was really fun and exciting. So here is the plenary, the time where we get to contribute to the group everything that was an aha. And I'm curious, in your group, what was an aha for you? What did you hear that made your body feel excited or brought a smile to your face or made you maybe sit up a little bit more straight in your chair?
I heard that one of my favorite people in the world is a potential connection. That as we were looking at other agencies and groups in the community. So that was exciting.
That's awesome, Anna.
I heard real intense thinking about how to include people with various viewpoints that might not agree and how to make space for them.
We had Ainsworth United, UCC in our group, as well as the Tully organizing, Yasmin and Mira, and we went in a different direction. And the aha that we had amongst our three communities was between the three of us, we could do a kind of a whole new regional effort and bring a lot of different things to the table. So that was kind of that was our aha moment. What would it look like if we acted together, the three of our groups?
So I think for me and probably for Aloha is to be able to connect with Janelli. She works for like a nonprofit organization that I have heard of, and I've been wanting to connect. So I really appreciate that, and I think that's really going to help us do our organizing.
I had a nice feeling in our group of this group gelling and picking up steam. You know, we've probably met together, I don't know if this might be the 5th time, but it's a group, it's a combined group of people from St. Philip the Deacon and people from St. Michael's. So these are two groups that to the greatest extent really haven't met each other before. So we're starting from a, you know, kind of scratch, and I could just sense how much we have really started to kind of connect and build some energy here, and it's really fun.
Yeah, I feel the same way, Joan.
Anybody else? Anybody else that we haven't heard from?
I'm curious, we've got some guests in the house, and it's always nice when someone's coming for the first time. I'm curious what some of the folks who might just be here for the first time might say, like, what were their ahas?
I think for me, I've been aware of the work that you all are doing for a long time, but I feel like this whole experience, just observing what's been going on and what you all are discussing, is a bit of an aha for me, to see the conversation in action and the intentional thinking and planning and relational work happening is just really beautiful to see. So this whole I've been completely silent, and mostly because I'm just soaking it all in.
For myself, this being my first time, my aha moment came when they talked about reaching out to community partners. And the reason the aha moment came is because you start to truly understand how deep it goes as far as wraparound services go. And my mind started to get to coming from, for example, I worked with Summer Works program, and I'm thinking that would be a good program to help kids because financially they'll be able to help their parents. A lot of kids that did that program use their money that they earned to help with bills. And so it teaches financial literacy. So I thought about the whole wraparound services concept.
Thank you all.
All right, take it away.
Maria for celebrations.
We have so much to celebrate. There's all sorts of things that have been happening. So I'm going to ask Jules to tell us a little bit about both West Portland UMC and some of the statewide legislation that's going on. And then Josh, if you just want to follow right up with Portland City Council, that would be great.
Lovely. Thanks, Maria. It's so good to see all of you. I'm Jules. I'm one of the pastors at Portsmouth Union Church and one of the organizers for all of us, all of you, accompanying you. And my celebration is twofold. One is that we have recently heard from our friends at Community of Hope, Trinity Lutheran, and West Portland United Methodist Church, who have been in one of our previous cohorts and continue to be working the process. They are in a bundle developing their properties together, their land together as partners. And they've chosen a developer, Edlin & Co. They have chosen an architect, Holst, and they have a general contractor, O'Neill Walsh. And if you would pray for or send good thoughts in the direction of West Portland United Methodist, they have their early application meeting with the city of Portland on February 3rd, which is a huge step in the process of development. It is the place where you learn all of the things that are going to happen. And so that's a huge celebration. So I just want to give us an opportunity to celebrate one of our faith communities moving forward. In fact, multiple of our faith communities moving forward. It is such a great thing. The second thing is many of you were involved with the expanding opportunities for affordable housing code changes over the last 2 years that the coalition was a huge part of moving forward and shaping so that faith communities can build housing on our land and do that in a way that allows for a whole lot of exceptional opportunities and making sure that it's as easy and quick as possible. And we were just reached out to by Tina Kotek, the Speaker of the House in Oregon, and she and her team are going to be using that law, that legislation that we helped form to introduce state legislation that matches and echoes it so that churches and faith communities across the state can do exactly what we've done in Multnomah County. So you all are leading the state already, and I'm just really excited to get to share it. There will be action around that, I'm sure, this year, so we will make sure that you're involved and that there's opportunity to participate. What about you, Josh? What do you want to say about City Council?
Somebody that I know named Mingus recently got elected to city council, and I was talking with him the other night and told him about this project, and he was very excited. He basically, his response was, okay, well, what can City Hall do? Like, he seemed really eager to just whip out his scissors and cut through red tape. So we have a meeting coming up with his director of community engagement towards the end of the month to get to know her a little bit better, as she's the primary person that we would be working with on any issues. And it was really encouraging to hear, that there's at least one person in that building, probably more, but at least one person in that building that's actively eager to try to solve a problem. So it's a win-win for everybody when that happens.
So just to follow up on that, we're going to be having house meetings or research meetings with some of the new city council people. So stay tuned, because we are going to be starting to bring groups from this group together to go in and to meet and develop relationship with our new elected officials and their staff, bringing our stories to the table and hearing what their visions are and where we can come together, where we might need to move power as a collective.
Can I just add a quick celebration too from St. Philip? So we actually just found out that as a part of this affordable housing piece, the upzone of St. Philip's property, it has been recommended by BPS to the city of Portland. We're probably going to get it, which makes a huge difference in what we can build. So we're really excited. So thank you guys for your help with all of that. It's really great.
All right, I think we are ready for next steps and evaluations. So first off, make sure that you have a meeting with your core team on the calendar so that you can plan your house meetings with your house meeting hosts, prepare time, agenda, all of that. You want to have these house meetings over the month of February. And just keep these conversations going that you've started to plan. Have one-to-one so that you can invite those names that came to your mind tonight to these house meetings. Be on the lookout in your email for more information about the research meetings with City Council. They'll be announced by 11, and there'll be opportunities to participate. So keep an eye on your email. And then put on your calendar right now that our next cohort gathering is
Wednesday, February the 24th, 2021, beginning at 6:30 p.m.
And then I'd like to just spend a few moments in the very important practice of evaluation. So we'll spend a few minutes here in the chat box. What was powerful from tonight? What stuck out to you? What worked really well? Oh, modeling of the questions helped with the breakout. Yes. Josh and Janelle's stories really got their why. That was really powerful, and being able to connect our why to what we're doing helps to keep us energized for this work. Janelle's story, always so powerful. Hearing about the organic relationships from people with longevity in the neighborhood. Yeah, it's amazing how listening to other people talk about their relationships sparks your mind and helps you to recognize the relationships in your own lives. Anything else from tonight that worked really well, that was powerful, that spoke to you? Good discussion and support in the breakouts as we formulated our questions. Yeah, that was an intentional move to have accompaniment in each of those rooms. Thanks everyone for engaging with these, with the evaluation. It's such an important part of how we plan these meetings moving forward. Just a really, and an important part of any type of gathering you do, always evaluate, and it just makes things better. So I think I'm ready to turn it over to LaVeta. Closing.
Well, we have come to the close of our time together. I do want to say, if you and your team would like to stay after and just finish up any last minute comments or anything like that, feel free to just let me know, and I can put you in a breakout room. But before we leave together, January has been quite a full month, and we made it through to January the 20th. Big hallelujah on that one. And in that big January 20th, Amanda Gorman shared, and there was something that she shared in her prose and poetry that resonated with me. And so I would like us to use a line from that to bless one another tonight. So I invite you to do something that Jules shared with us at a session one time. We each have these frames around ourselves that make us feel as if we're just our own individual person. So let's push out against those frames by putting your hands on the sides so that you're touching the person next to you. Yeah, touch the person next to you. And as you are touching that person, I'm going to remove myself from the spotlight. I'm going to put myself on gallery view so that I can see us touching and blessing one another. And I leave you with this blessing. Remember, dear friends, that there is always light, if only we are brave enough to see it, and if only we are brave enough to be it. So I invite us now to go forth and be the light. So be it.